Hey everyone, Cameron Eldred here, doctorate in athletic training student through Indiana State University. So today we're going to be talking about a brief reflection on a video that was done by Joseph Grenny. He talks about how we develop stories that lead us to either silence or violence as we approach very important conversations in our lives. He used an example of talking to his 15-year-old son who had just gotten a new jacket and was spilling food all over it. Now, me as a parent, I can relate. I see my child spilling things all over himself all the time. Granted, he's only 3 years old. But there's times that I just want to be like, dude, come on. What are you thinking? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you getting stuff everywhere? So this was actually really relatable for me. He talks about 3 different stories that we tell ourselves. So he talks about the victim story, the villain story, and the helpless story. So first we'll talk about that victim story. So the victim story that he talks about is, it's not my fault. Whatever's happening, this crucial conversation, whatever's gonna happen, it's not my fault. It has nothing to do with me. The next one is the villain story. It's their fault. It's always their fault. It's on their head. A lot of the times we see this with supervisors and stuff like that when we're trying to point the blame and point the finger. The other one is the helpless story. There's nothing I can do about it. There's a lot of things that had to do with this that I felt really connected to. So what I'm going to talk about is my most recent difficult conversation that I had to have, which was talking about rectal thermometry within the secondary setting. This conversation occurred with my athletic director, and it was not an easy conversation, especially considering where we live, small town, rural area. You start talking about rectal temperature, and immediately the conversation takes a turn to negativity and crass jokes. So during this conversation, I talked myself into the helpless story, thinking that there's nothing I can do about it. He doesn't want this, even though this is something that's becoming is a standard of patient care. There's nothing I can do to try to push this across the table. There's nothing I can do to get his approval. There's no reason for me to continue with this. And I kind of villainized him in my head, and I thought, he won't listen. It's his fault. I guess I told myself all 3. It's not my fault that he doesn't understand. So I just shut down. So I didn't escalate my feelings. I didn't turn to violence. I turned to silence. And by the end of the conversation, it was just like, you know what, you're right. All right, we'll talk about this at a later time maybe, and bye. That was it. So I told myself these stories. I told myself there's nothing I can do about the fact that he doesn't understand, and it's not my fault that he doesn't understand. And he's the one who's saying no. So, it's you look at these situations in your life and you realize that, yeah, nobody's perfect. We tell these things to ourselves all the time. So my feelings, I would say, yeah, they negatively impacted my actions because I shut down. I let my feeling of discontent with the delivery that I had made and his unwillingness to listen impact the fact that I just have pushed it aside and I haven't talked about it anymore. When in reality, I should have taken what I was doing and I should have owned it. And I should have said, you know what, maybe my delivery wasn't the best. As a matter of fact, my delivery wasn't the best. And I need to find a better way to get to him. What kinds of things do I know about my athletic director that I could tie everything into? How could I relate this to patient safety on a better platform? So these are the things that I started needing to do. And I have been trying to find a different way to approach the situation, but what I was trying to approach it as was, well, he's just not going to understand. I kept these negative feelings inside of me, and it wasn't until, I watched this video a couple of days ago that I was like, wow, I've been telling myself these stories repeatedly. I haven't been as open and honest with myself as I needed to be. And so now I have this thought in my head of, okay, how can I think outside of the box? How can I say, you know, it's not my fault that he doesn't understand? Well, it is my fault. And why didn't he understand? And looking at the villain story and saying, well, he just doesn't get it and he just says no because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the patient safety. That's a lie. He cares about patient safety. He just doesn't understand why this plays into patient safety, and that's my fault. Again, and it's how can I help him understand? And then the last part is the helpless story. There's nothing I can do about this. No, that's a lie. I can. There's so much I can do about this. There's so much that plays into me helping him understand the concepts and how this can affect our patient care. So, my behavior, I responded negatively, and I've been trying to find a way out of that hole, but I haven't been able to because I wasn't thinking correctly. I was letting my feelings still get the best of me. As for looking at my, we took a little quiz that kind of gave us an assertiveness score and kind of gave us an idea of where we sit at. Further to the left, and it would have been, you're not as assertive, you just kind of are passive, which I found kind of interesting as I was going through and answering these questions, because I feel that that's how I am. I feel pretty kind of on the fence because according to my score, I seldom hesitate to address the issues that concern me the most. Whether it's noisy neighbors or perhaps a raise I feel I deserve, you'll immediately bring it to attention. You express yourself quite freely, asserting my personal rights with the confidence that your request is reasonable. As a typical self-assured individual, you are fairly comfortable with letting others know you disagree with them, especially when you feel you're being treated poorly. This approach shows you that you deserve respect and want others to treat you this way. Now, there's parts of that I feel are correct and parts of it that don't, especially in this specific situation. I didn't react the way that I probably should have. Whereas that says that I should have been more assertive. But now that I've taken the opportunity to take a step back, I realize that yes, I am an assertive person, and I like other people to know my opinion. But in that specific instance, it was something that I wasn't comfortable with, and I gave up on it. So in this specific conversation, I don't feel like my assertiveness score aligned with how I approached the conversation, which I found interesting. But looking back on other previous conversations, I do feel that that score is correct. There's been a lot of opportunity for me to open my mouth and kind of be opinionated, and I give my opinion. So the score overall is correct in my opinion. I'm right in between being extremely assertive and not assertive. But in this instance, it wasn't, which is okay. That's okay. So yeah, those are just a couple of the things that I've learned about. So if you have an opportunity, listen to the Joseph Grenny talk. It really gives a lot of insight into the stories that we tell ourselves, and it provides an opportunity for us to be able to think back on how maybe we need to change ourselves. Because there's nothing wrong with that. It's always positive, and we should always be striving to be better than who we are right now. So those of you who are in the Midwest right now, stay frosty. It's cold out there, hence I've got the beanie on. But thank you again for listening, and have a wonderful day.